Okay, let's take a look at the box office from this past weekend. So total domestic box office was 151 million. So a 29% drop, which makes sense though, considering that last week Inside Out 2 opened $250 million, which is like the biggest opening of the year by a long shot, like basically doubling the previous biggest opening, which was like, I think close to like 60 or 70 million, right? Was that Dune? I'm not sure. But taking a look at the film's opening this week, before we move into talking about Inside Out 2 again, we have at number 3, the Bikeriders, which is a kind of like indie, exactly what it sounds like, kind of a biker gang movie with Austin Butler and Tom Hardy. They brought in only about 10 million. I had projected it would make about 12 to 17 in its opening weekend, so this was definitely a little bit of an underperformance. But I'm going to give it a little slack, again, considering, again, the elephant in the room that is Inside Out 2, just kind of sucking the oxygen out of everything else, right? This was made for about a $30 to $40 million budget, so still a long way to make back that budget, and it's only made about 14 million worldwide. So, but again, the films like this are smaller, and they are meant to kind of be smaller and have more qualitative value, like prestige, like maybe for awards or what have you. So we'll see how this does, but I don't really see this like it's not even like a super huge critical darling either. So I'm predicting this won't stay in the top 10 for too long, especially as we move into some more bigger releases for the summer, right? Also opening this week at number 7, The Exorcism, which is like the second Russell Crowe Exorcist movie this year. He was also in a movie called The Pope's Exorcist. This has not gotten very good reviews, only opened to about 2.4 million for the weekend, bringing it to 4 million worldwide. Also here in the top 10, which is cool to see though, is number 8, Thelma, which I was going to see this past weekend, but in New York we've been hit with a heat wave, and it was like 90 plus degrees on Saturday, which is when I was going to go see this movie, and I was just like, you know what, if it's over 90 degrees, I don't have a car, I gotta take public transit and then walk like, a couple blocks, it's too hot, I'm just gonna go see it another day. But it's a shame, because I heard it was really good. It's like this movie about like this old woman. Well, let me go to Letterboxd. I forget what the like exact kind of little blurb is. So here's the blurb. So when 93-year-old Thelma Post gets duped by a phone scammer pretending to be her grandson, she sets on a treacherous quest across the city to reclaim what was taken from her. So it almost seems like a old lady version of John Wick or something, almost like a revenge, kind of comedic revenge movie. And it obviously didn't make a lot. It was only made about 2.2 million for the weekend, but it made it to the top 10. So I think that is worthy of note here. And then also rounding out the top 10, at number 10 is Ghost, Right Here, Right Now, bringing in 1.5 million. This is just like a concert film for some musical group, I think, called Ghost. I really don't know much about it. But looking at what's continuing this weekend, of course, we got to talk about Inside Out. Inside Out 2, rather, holding its first place spot in its second weekend, its second frame, bringing in $100 million in its second weekend. This was only a 35% drop. If you've been following the show, you know I've been an Inside Out 2 naysayer. My review of it actually is going to be coming out on my Substack on cinemaincuso.substack.com tomorrow. So if you want to hear like my more formal thoughts on the film, you can check that out. But even beyond that, I didn't think it was going to do financially well because Pixar's been stagnating, and I thought past tense that people were kind of over Inside Out and all of that. But not only was I proven wrong once, I've been proven wrong again, because I was also like, we'll see what the drop is. This is a pretty good drop, 35%. And what did I say? The total for the weekend was 151. Inside Out 2 is basically 2/3 of the whole domestic box office from this past weekend, right? This brings its total to 355 million domestically and 724 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing movie of the year, I think, both domestically and worldwide, off of just a $200 million budget. So, it definitely has proven successful for Pixar and for Disney. I think Disney especially was really looking to see some better performance from Pixar. But like I said before, like I said last week, it'll be interesting. Hollywood always takes the wrong lessons. So what lessons are they going to take from this movie being successful? Probably we need to make more sequels and reboots of our existing IP. and that's going to crowd out some of the more original and more interesting stories that Pixar has been kind of doing. Also, continuing this week, we have at number 2, Bad Boys Ride or Die at 19 million. Holding second place in its third frame. Only a 44% drop. So this has been having some decent legs despite not making a bunch of money. This could be one that, and probably until like Deadpool and Wolverine comes out, this could just kind of be like something that just makes consistently like a decent amount of money every weekend. This brings its domestic total to 147 million and worldwide total to 289 million off of a $100 million budget. So this is definitely profitable at this point. And it's, it'll be interesting to see if a fifth Bad Boys is on the way, which based off of this, it might be. Also continuing, number 4, we have the Garfield movie, bringing 3.6 million. Also holding on to its 4th place spot in its 5th frame. Only a 25% drop. This is another one that I've talked about that, is just going to have some legs and keep going because it's already been brought up to now to an 85 million domestic total and a 237 million total worldwide off of just a $60 million budget. This was not a movie that broke the bank in any sense. And it's interesting to see it still hold, despite Inside Out 2 coming in and kind of having a similar demographic. And I wonder if, the expression like rising tide, tide raises all ships, right? What is the expression? Tide raises all ships. A rising tide lifts all boats. There we go. The idea that people went to see Inside Out 2 and were just kind of like hungry to go back to the movies. Like this kind of opened the floodgates in a lot of ways. And that's why I think Inside Out 2's success both last weekend and this weekend really represents like people just wanting to go to the movies and we're just waiting for the right movie. And now that they're back to going to the movies, they're like, they want to scratch that itch of like, what's another anime movie I can go see? And then you have the Garfield movie. Also still in the top 5 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, bringing 3.6 million for the weekend. It dropped from 3rd to 5th, but it's in its 7th frame. So this thing's been out for almost 2 months. It's still in the top 5. Only a 35% drop, bringing its totals to 164 million domestically and 381 million worldwide off of just a $160 million budget. So this is definitely a success, right? And then one final film I want to talk about in the top 10 here is If, right? Imaginary Friend, the John Krasinski family film at number 6, bringing just 2.8 million, dropping from 5th to 6th. But kind of like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, it's now in its 6th frame. So not as long as Planet of the Apes has been in theaters, but still, the fact it's still in the top 10, especially considering it did not open very well and did not get super stellar reviews, it's only a 23% drop in this past weekend. So it's brought its total now to 107 million domestically and 181 million worldwide, just off of a $110 million budget. And I'm skeptical that this will get to 200 million worldwide by the end of its run, unless it continues to have these legs and just stay stay in theaters for a really long time, which I'm skeptical about as well. But I do think that this will be a good moneymaker when it goes to digital and when it goes to streaming. Because this is like the quintessential just throw something on movie, from what it seems like, right? So it'll be interesting to see, if it gets like a sequel or anything, or if, they decide to make some other kind of John Krasinski directed family film. Who's to say? But it's definitely not the disaster I think it may have seemed when it first opened. But some things that maybe are semi-disastrous. We have now I'm going to start doing this every week. I'm going to look at what has dropped out of the top 10. So things that were in the top 10 as early as, or as far as soon back as last weekend. And we have here Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which you can't see in the picture here. It's now at a number 11, so just dropped out of number, just dropped out of the top 10. But again, falling from 7 to 11 is a little disappointing. Only in its 5th week, so that's a little concerning. But then a movie that it's surprising they stay in the top 10 as long as it did is The Fall Guy, right? That was one of the big stories of the summer box office season. This film that underperformed, but just kept having, consistent performance week to week. It after 8 weeks or 7 weeks, I guess, in the top 10. Now its 8th weekend dropped from 8th place to 12th place. And then also just of note, we also have The Strangers Chapter 1, the horror film in its 6th frame, finally dropping out of the top 10, going from 9th to 15th place. So it's kind of, interesting to see. There's been a lot of very surprising things about this summer box office season so far. A lot of movies that I thought were going to do much better that have kind of floundered, and then some movies that I thought weren't going to do so well are now, hint, hint, Inside Out 2 are one of the most successful movies of the last decade and the highest grossing movie of the year. So it's going to be I'm very excited to as we move into July, especially once we get to Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm very, very curious if, similar with Inside Out 2, people are just going to, because Marvel has kind of forced themselves to take a pause for the past 8 or 9 months or so. And also we haven't had a Deadpool movie in 6 years. And we haven't had an X-Men movie of any kind in 4 or 5 years. And the popularity of the continuation of the 90s X-Men series, the X-Men 97, which is on Disney+. I think that it's a perfect storm that Deadpool and Wolverine could be huge. But I have been wrong before.